Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Hi, welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is LaSheila Yates, and I'm one of the moderators and producers for the show. I'd like to welcome you to take an opportunity to listen and learn about some of the social justice activities in Marion, Iowa. We are currently I'm located in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and was interested in our neighboring community and a lot of work that they're doing. And the guests that we have today here are really engaged in some of that work in making sure that we have a safe, equitable, and thriving community. And members of our panels are all members of the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity. And so I'll introduce each person, but just wanted to let you know that each individual is a member of the umbrella organization. So I'm not going to continue to repeat the actual name of the organization. Rather, I'll tell you their titles and then we'll get into the dialogue. First, I want to introduce Anna Clymer. She is on the executive committee for MAR. Thank you for joining us, Anna.
Thank you.
Also, we have Joshua Milam. He's also executive member as well. And so, Joshua, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, Circé Stumbo. She's also a member of the executive committee, and we're definitely glad to have her here as well.
So glad to be here with you.
So when it comes to some of the social justice activities and engagement in Marion, Iowa, I'll just start off with you, Circé. Could you tell me a bit about the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity and some of the work that you all are doing? Well, I would say first, but even before then, how did you get started?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So we are a community-based organization, really committed to ensuring that Marion is a welcoming and inclusive community for all people, including in particular people of color. We started out just about 1 year ago when we had a group of us who came together under the leadership of Dee Humbles, who has unfortunately passed away, who we remember with great love, and Teray and Sophia Joseph and Anna and others who were responding to the call for social justice that really came in response to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which is so close to us right now. And we came together in a protest, in a rally, and a time of sharing and spirit to say we want to do better as a community. And it was a very informal alliance at first, and we shortly grew out of that into an organization that continues to grow with really the vision of making sure that Marion is as welcoming and inclusive as we can possibly be.
And so, Anna or Joshua, do you have anything else you'd like to add to, in addition to kind of how did you get started and, what did you see as an opportunity to engage as an alliance?
For me, personally, I've lived in Marion for almost 17 years. And before I moved here, way back then, I'd heard various takes on what this community was like. And I thought, there's got to be neighbors that don't want that kind of reputation. And as the rally started, we heard more and more voices amplifying that this community could do more. So that's part of the movement, certainly in what I've engaged with. My children and my husband, we all live here in this community. And part of that initial drive was finally, right, we're doing something in our community to bring attention to some of the inequities and thinking about the kind of community we want to build together, and the kind of allies we want to recruit. Certainly, I've known several of the people on the panel here, as well as many of the other executive members, and now the core group, for many years, and knowing that they're also passionate about the work and trying to think about how we refine our messages to make some real change happen, not just for the short term, but certainly for the long term.
Thank you. And Joshua, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that, as far as with seeing Marion shape and evolve, and maybe even why MAR is important to you?
Definitely, especially with Ms. Circé and Ms. Anna. They've already expressed how great the work is and the need for the work in Marion. It's important to me because one thing I can't stand is to see people go without, or to see a people who's hurting, or see a people where there's a need and it's not being met. And MAR is very important to me because just watching and seeing the cries of the people and seeing like, we need to do something, we need to do this, we need to do that. It struck a nerve in me because I'm like, yes, something does need to happen, because why in such a beautiful neighborhood, such a beautiful city, such a beautiful place where we could have so many pain and problems that we don't do something. And the thing is, I see growth. I could see that growth can take place. And what better way to help growth than to get your hands dirty? I believe that many hands make light work. And to get the job done, it's not time to stand on the sidelines, but to get into work. And so when I moved to Marion and I heard the cry and I seen what they were doing, I was like, why sit back? Let's get into it. And they're making strides and they're making great progress. And the people are hurting, but the people are also hopeful. And so watching MAR make such a significant difference, I wanted to be a part of that, because they're going to ask a question 10 years from now. Where were you when history was being made? I want to be able to say I was there and I was fighting alongside people who don't even look like me, but believed in the same thing I do.
Okay, thank you. I do want to follow up. One important point that was brought up is, Marion and kind of the social activism. And I know that last year, pointing to the fact that there was a protest after the unfortunate incident with George Floyd. Is there, when that, I guess, why was it so important to have a protest in Marion, Iowa, when it's, one of the smaller communities in comparison to like a Minneapolis or Chicago or, even a Dallas or New York? Why Marion? Why did you feel the need to have one in Marion?
Well, if I may, there's a need for Marion to have that take place, because one thing is for sure, it doesn't matter whether it's big or a small city. When enough is enough, enough is enough. And when change needs to take place during a time when people are set in comfortability. And Marion is a place where it can be more than what it is. And just because one particular part is happy and the other one isn't, that doesn't mean it's comfortable. That means it's time for a change. And there's been a many of cries coming out of the city. Even it just significantly amplified, because the only difference between racism then and racism now is that now the cameras are on and they can be seen. So the march needed to take place because it was a major matter. It was a major battle cry to let the people know, hey, it's time. Enough is enough. Let's make these strides, because we know the future, what Marion can look like. And what that can look like is going to take the steps and the footwork of the people. And so it had to take place, because if we want to see difference, we got to make a difference. And if we want to make a difference, we got to take some changes.
Any other thoughts?
Reverend Milam is so inspiring. It's such a joy to get to work with him and be alongside him in the boardroom and on the sidewalk and in the streets. So yeah, I've only been in Marion for 6 years now, but I have felt that across the community, we have a desire to do good and to do what is right and to do what is just and to understand better the ways that we have not been as welcoming and inclusive as we thought perhaps maybe we, as frankly a predominantly white community, thought that we were. And we've been able to open our eyes in the conversations and in the stories that we're hearing about the ways our systems really have not been set up in the ways that we all want. And so it's not easy. It's not a simple task to say, here's how we fix things and become a place in which our fellow community members of color and our Black, Indigenous, and people of color amongst us thrive. But I feel like that is our goal, it is our desire. And so there's a strong energy behind the work and a joy in getting to work together with our neighbors to say, you know, we have to pull back the curtain and figure out what is not working so that we can be better as a community.
Okay. And I know in thinking about some of the, opportunities for a better community and how things could look, one important part of building a strong community is having good public policy and regulations and laws and protections, as well as, ensuring that with public policy that there's also buy-in and follow through. And a lot of times what we've seen with grassroots organizations, they bring attention to some of the public policy needs within a particular community. And so what has MAR done to promote and push public policy? And have you seen any movement with that particular, those particular public policy efforts at the push for those public policies? And I'll start with maybe at the city level, and then if you've done anything in the county and in the state.
Anna, I think this might be a great time for you to share we came out with 6 demands, 3 of which were appropriate at the city level, and we are also expanding beyond them. But I think it might be helpful to talk about those 3 at the Marion City level that maybe Anna, you could share.
Sure. Sorry, had to get unmuted. But for the focus that we initially had approached the mayor as well as one of the council members just to have a conversation about things that we had been hearing in the community, and obviously the sense of urgency that was rising up in various levels of community that wanted to be heard in the context of seeking change in policy and practice. And some of those initial main demands, as we called them when we began, was really around approaching policing specifically. Some of the cries that we initially heard were really around disproportionality and disparity and how policing occurred in our community. And with that request, it was really looking at what are the policies, what are the practices, what's occurring on the force. We even had police officers engaging with us in conversation and saying, yes, there needs to be change. And we're encouraging this conversation to continue to look at practice, to look at hiring, to look at training, and promoting some of that racial profiling that had been reported by many of our neighbors in regards to traffic stops, ticketing of citizens that were Black or brown. In a 92% white community, majority community, things like that stand out to our neighbors, that they feel like they've been targeted in some way. So some of those recommendations really went to the city manager and the police chief and the mayor, just to really review what policing looked like in our community, looking to stop racial profiling, traffic stops. The other piece that we really wanted to concentrate on was that all city departments to continuously work to be more welcoming, inclusive, and engaging, respectful and diverse to the community members that they do have here. Both the ones that actually own property here, are business people here, and that rent or pass through our community. And certainly having the city departments be reflective of the residents that live here in the community, as well as boards, commissions that are reflective of Marion. Additionally, our other request was encouraging a mental health liaison to be available for the Marion Police Department in crisis calls, and really addressing some of those root issues that weren't necessarily requiring police action or arrest, but rather support and resources for some of those residents that were in crisis. So those are the three main ones that we moved forward within the task force that was created after the City Council had approved some of that forward action around those three key demands that they felt and we felt could gain some movement in our community.
Thank you. So have any of you seen any action or any, for example, looking at the Citizen Review Board, has there been any steps made to actually have a policy in place and to begin recruiting individuals? Where is the city is on that particular item? Oh.
I'm muted. You think I'd know by now. No, we did call for the City Council to convene a task force, a community equity task force, which they did indeed do. And we have now been meeting for just about 7 months, 8 months almost, with a wide range of open opportunities for members to bring forward their concerns. We brought forward the 3 concerns that Anna laid out. And, you know, these things take some time. The task force takes some time to get to know each other and one another and understand what we consider to be the most significant challenges facing our city. We came forward certainly with policing and how we think about policing as one of our major issues. Other people had other concerns and interests and wanting to hear from the community. I would say that we might be, frankly, just a little bit feeling like we're well into it. It's time to start seeing some more action. We're hopeful. We have a meeting coming up in the first weeks of July, and we do now have a new facilitator for the task force that the city has brought in, which we are hopeful will help us to hone in our focus. We had great progress on one of the goals. One of our demands was for a mental health liaison to be available to work directly with the police department, hired outside of the police department, and that was something that the police department was able to make happen, and we're quite pleased for that. It's a beginning step. It's someone who's available, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. We suspect that the need is broader than that, and hope that as the task force, we'll be able to see what the data is around the community liaison, the police liaison for mental health issues. And I'd invite some of the others here to share your thoughts about the importance of having a mental health liaison, because I do think that's one area where we got dramatic change in the forefront of the state, frankly.
Yes, I would be interested in that as well. The feedback, because when you think of the name of your organization, which is the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity, how does having a mental health liaison, fit into that when it comes to policing?
If I may, I believe that aspect alone is a major push for us. Reason being is we recognize that for them to do their job, it is a mental purpose for them to be on point, making great decisions. And so we want to make sure, and we're glad that they got this piece of the puzzle, because we recognize that doing the job brings a lot on the mind. Dealing with different people, different personalities, and so on and so forth can bring them out of issue. And we want to make sure, and we're so thankful that somebody's there to help them work out some of the issues between different people, between different situations, between different problems, and also help guide in a certain way, because we recognize that job is based on ethics and perspective. And we just so thankful that somebody outside of the box is willing to help them make rash and great decisions that causes a great issue.
I might just add, I love that you asked the question about why an alliance for racial equity might focus on mental health liaison. And I think that there's a potential trap we could fall into, which is to define the challenge of policing as community members who are experiencing crisis. Certainly, there are community members who experience crisis and they need support. That in itself isn't the racial equity question. The racial equity question is, what do we want our police department to be focused on and centered around? And I think, the idea of protect and serve, the idea of being peace officers, that really is core at the center of how we're hoping as a community we can sort of redefine the work of policing. We're learning that traffic stops, pretextual traffic stops, lead to disproportionate experiences for people of color and not better outcomes. And so we're working with the police department and with the city as a whole to really look into what is it that we want out of our police force, and in what ways can we ensure that that police force has the kinds of professional backgrounds and experiences and partnerships with people outside of the police department, all working toward ensuring that we have a peaceful and safe community in which everyone can thrive.
Okay. Thank you. I have another follow-up to that. You brought up a good point about the, a safe community, a peaceful community, and even and I think about just the equity lens. And any of you can jump in and respond to this, but what have members of the community, how have they defined an equitable community that's maybe safe, that's peaceful, that's welcoming? How have any outreach that you've done or any connections that you've made, how have they described these community qualities? What do they say? Okay, this is how I define a peaceful community. This is what equity means to me. Have you received any feedback about, what constitutes a equitable, peaceful, safe, welcoming community?
I think oftentimes it depends on who's speaking. We've partnered with a lot of our students in the education realm in both Linn-Mar as well as Marion Independent to ensure that we're amplifying their voices when they see concerns that they don't feel safe in the classroom or they don't feel welcomed in the community. We try to ensure that we hear them, and then we also gather support in order to show up at school district meetings. We hear the voices of individuals that are concerned over the policing and try to partner with them to see how can we move forward conversation, whether it's in the task force or at city council meetings or elsewhere, or the commission, Civil Rights Commission. So I think there's various avenues in order to move forward some of those experiences that people have that don't align with, obviously, the goals of any community is to make it feel like it's welcoming and inclusive to everyone.
I think we've heard folks share that their hope is that the presumption is that they show up wherever they show up, whether it's in a business, at City Hall, perhaps on a traffic stop, that they are seen as being a part of the community. They show up as a valued member of our community who deserves respect and dignity at the beginning. And unfortunately, we've heard stories of individuals, of people of color, where the police have been called because they have not, they've in their neighborhoods, they've been seen as a threat, for example, or other sorts of things that where they experience Marion as a place where they're not seen as a valued member of the community, but rather as a potential threat. And our hope is that from neighbor to neighbor, business to patron, city department to citizen, that resident to visitor, that everyone sees one another as dignified and valued residents and neighbors and visitors. And that's the opportunity and also the challenge, because sometimes, unfortunately, we enact this disbelief, this unwelcoming sensibility without realizing that we're doing it. And that's what we're hopeful that folks will start to understand, is the ways in which we can unintentionally make people feel unwelcome, and to try to shift that.
And so, Joshua, and I know we have just a couple of minutes here, but I want to get just, your brief perspective on some of the work that's being done here, and how does that relate to because I know you're a reverend, and so how does that relate to some of the work that maybe people of the faith community, they're doing? Because, some of our great leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King was at the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was at the head of the civil rights movement. So is there anything, are there things that you're seeing being done in the faith community in Marion that's helping to thrust some of the work of MAR?
Absolutely. Thanks to the wonderful Miss Anna, who stands in the gap between the faith community and everybody else. We believe that one thing about community, the preacher, pastor, reverend, whoever in the faith, is the pillar, is the gatekeeper, is the watcher of the people. Bible even declares it, how we are to watch out for the people. And if somebody comes up and tries to harm them, then it's their job to make sure that they stand in the gap to sound the alarm. And we want to make that plain, that even in the faith community, we stand up. Every congregation should have a say and have a conversation about what we need to be doing. Because if anybody stands in the gap between for the people, it's the preacher. If anybody stands in the gap between evil and the people, it's the preacher, it's the leader, it's the faith leader, whether they be Chinese, Hindu, whether they be African American, El Salvadorian, Mexican, white, no matter what the color is and no matter what the heart is, if there's a situation, the preacher or whoever the faith leader stands in the gap. We lead out and we stand the gate. And the churches have played a major role in Marion for pushing Mar's perspective, because we stand together. If we don't have connection with the faith community, we don't have connection with anybody, because the mailman, the beautician, the people at the stores, the people at the gas station, they sitting in somebody's church. And the way to get the perspective and the job done, we got to hit the churches. And thank God that the churches play a major role in pushing the perspective of Mar.
Well said, Reverend. We appreciate it. We have about maybe a couple of seconds left. So, Anna, would you like to tell us a bit about an upcoming event that you have in July?
Absolutely. There's a Marion Alliance Unity Rally that Lutheran Church of the Resurrection here in Marion, who helps lead the Stand in Unity collective group of faith leaders across Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and other communities, is hosting. So the Marion Alliance will be posting some additional information, how people can get engaged, hear speakers locally, speak to some of the progress we talked about here tonight. So hopefully July 17th at Lutheran Church of the Resurrection in Marion from 3 to 5 p.m. people are able to join.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and conclude here and wrap things up. I want to say I appreciate our guests for joining us. It was definitely a great opportunity to sit and chat and listen. But more importantly, they're doing some wonderful things in our community. And I know each one of them. And I'm just so proud of what's being done here in the Marion community, which is, our neighboring community for Cedar Rapids. So thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful day.